It started with a text. Just a simple one. Dinner Friday night? Just us. I need to talk. Red heart, Jules. Now, I don't know what kind of emotional landmines you've stepped on in your life, but I've learned one thing. When your wife of 8 years adds a heart emoji to a message that includes the phrase, I need to talk, you'd better prepare yourself. Could be a baby announcement. Could be a divorce. Could be anything in between. Could be both. But me? I was optimistic. Dumb, but optimistic. I thought maybe she wanted to work on us. We'd hit a few bumps, sure, who hasn't? Marriage is just long-term hostage negotiation with shared furniture. But I still believed in us. Or, at least, I believed in the version of us I thought still existed. Friday night rolls around. I shave. I iron a shirt. I even shine my shoes, which, judging by the fact they looked surprised to be touched again, was an event. I arrive at the restaurant 5 minutes early, heart doing somersaults like it's trying out for Cirque du Soleil. And there she is. Jules. My wife. Hair curled just right. That green dress, the one she said was too much for date nights. She wore it anyway. She stood as I approached, and for a second, I felt it. That jolt, that memory of when just seeing her walk toward me could rearrange my whole day. She smiled. But there was something off. Then I saw him. He was already at the table. Sitting. Comfortable. Wearing cologne I could smell from 10 feet away. He didn't stand. He didn't even pretend to be surprised to see me. Just looked up, smiled, and said, Hey man, you must be Evan. I've heard so much about you. My stomach didn't drop. It plummeted like a stone tossed from a skyscraper. Jules gestured casually. Evan, this is Clay. He's been helping me through some things. Now, let me pause here. When your wife introduces a man as someone who's been helping her through some things, while both of them are already seated at a table meant for two, you do what I did. You fake a smile and sit down, because standing makes you look like you're not in control. And if there's one thing I've always hated, it's looking like I'm not in control. I sat, ordered water, and as Clay leaned back, smug as a cat in cream, I nodded like I was in on the joke, because I didn't know yet what the punchline was. But I would. And brother, when it landed, it didn't just knock the wind out of me, it rewrote everything. So there we were. 3 at a table made for 2. Me, Jules, my wife of nearly a decade, and Clay, who apparently thought cuffed sleeves and toothpick grins made him the main character. The waiter didn't even flinch. He must have seen worse. Or maybe he just didn't care. Either way, I respected the man. Jules took a long sip of wine, white, chilled, nervously gulped, and said, I know this is a little unusual. I smiled. I've got a good smile. Used to be the thing Jules loved most about me. That and my grilled steak rub. Now she barely looked at me. Her eyes were glued to her glass, like if she stared hard enough, it had become a portal she could jump through. Clay, God bless his misguided bravery, cleared his throat. We just wanted to have an honest conversation. No surprises. That's when I knew. Right there. That sentence? That's what people say when they're about to throw a surprise birthday party or shatter your life like a dropped mirror. No surprises? I repeated, calm as a monk in a snowstorm. So this isn't a surprise? Jules put her hand on my wrist. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. That line. That was the one that hit different. Make this harder than it has to be? I glanced at her hand, still soft, familiar, and slowly pulled mine away. Not angrily. Not dramatically. Just deliberately. Like I was untethering myself from something I no longer trusted. Clay leaned in. Evan. I held up a hand. Let me guess. You're not trying to steal her. You didn't mean for this to happen. You think I'm a good guy. You respect what we had. You just caught feelings. He blinked. She blinked. Thought so. I sat back, folded my napkin with military precision, and smiled. Not because I was okay, but because a part of me had just died, and I didn't want either of them to see the funeral. I appreciate the heads up, I said. This little intervention? Very thoughtful. Jules's eyes softened, like maybe she thought I was taking it well. I wasn't, but I was taking it quietly. I stood, buttoned my jacket, and tossed a few bills on the table. Dinner's on me. Call it a parting gift. Clay stood too, like we were about to shake hands and promise to play racquetball on weekends. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I turned to Jules, paused, then said the most honest thing I'd said all year. I'm not angry. I'm awake now. That's worse. And I walked out. Out of the restaurant. Out of whatever game they thought they were playing. And right into a version of myself I hadn't seen in years, the version that watched. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just drove. That aimless kind of driving that feels like movement, even if you're circling the same city blocks hoping the air will wash the betrayal off you. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. That comes later. What I felt was clarity. For the first time in a long time, I saw it all. The late nights at work. The gym classes she suddenly had to teach, even though she was a graphic designer. The text she would read and then flip her phone over like it was shy. I'd asked her once, "Why do you always hide your screen?" She smiled and said, "Habit." Turns out, betrayal's a habit too. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the porch light was on. A small, innocent glow, like nothing inside was rotting from the core. I stepped through the door, dropped my keys on the bowl she insisted we keep by the entry, its aesthetic, Evan, and stared into the silence. She wasn't home yet. Of course she wasn't. But her laptop was. And her iPad. And her journal, the one she thought I never noticed shoved behind the cookbooks we never used. Let me make something clear. I'm not a snooper. Never have been. I believed in trust. I believed in Jules. I used to think opening someone's journal without permission was a betrayal in itself. But then again, so is sleeping with a man who wears cologne that costs more than my monthly gas bill. I opened it. First page, quotes. She was always a sucker for Pinterest-style wisdom. Follow your heart. Growth is painful. Love isn't always logical. Convenient. The real show started on page 3. Clay said it again tonight, he understands me. It's scary how different he is from Evan. I don't feel like I'm suffocating when I'm around him. With Evan, it's like I'm always apologizing for being too much. Too much? You were never too much, Jules. You were everything. That was the problem. I gave you everything, and you used it as leverage. The entries continued. Dates. Details. A log of deception, carefully pinned between to-do lists and yoga goals. He kissed me behind the office. I didn't want to stop him. Evan almost found my texts. Thank God I had notifications off. And then this gym. If Evan ever found out, he'd never recover. He's not built for this kind of betrayal. That one made me laugh. Actually laugh. Because, Jules, I am built for it. I just didn't know it yet. My phone buzzed. A text from her. Please don't hate me. Can we talk when I get back? I stared at it. No punctuation. Just desperation wrapped in a disguise of gentleness. I didn't reply. Instead, I stood up, walked to the closet, pulled down the shoebox I hadn't touched in 6 years, and opened it. Inside were the spare keys to my cabin up north. The one Jules hated. Said it smelled like rustic disappointment. Perfect. Because for what I had in mind, disappointment was just the appetizer. It took her 3 days to notice I was gone. 3 days. Now, to be fair, I left my phone on the kitchen counter, face down, silent, and full of unread messages. I'd packed light, a duffel bag, a few essentials, and that shoebox of cabin keys and old letters. I drove through the night, windows down, letting the cold mountain air slap me awake. You haven't truly reflected on your marriage until you've stared at a winding road at 2 a.m. with nothing but silence and a half-melted protein bar for company. The cabin greeted me like an old friend with bad knees, creaky, weathered, but still standing. Built by my grandfather, passed down like wisdom I never appreciated until life demanded it. Jules always called it a haunted shack for introverts. I called it solitude. By sunrise, the fire was crackling, the coffee was brewing, and I'd finally exhaled for the first time since that dinner table ambush. 3 days passed. 3 days of no contact, no social media, no Jules. It was like erasing the chalkboard of my life and finally seeing the clean slate underneath. On the morning of day 4, I got mail. Now, let me clarify. This cabin hasn't seen a postman in years. So when I stepped outside and found a plain white envelope tucked between the screen door and the frame, my stomach clenched with a mix of dread and curiosity. No stamp. No return address. Just my name in her handwriting. I opened it slowly. Inside was a card. One of those fancy ones from the bookstore with a watercolor tree on the front and a quote about forgiveness inside. Of course, her message was handwritten in tiny, deliberate script. Evan, I didn't plan for any of this to happen. I swear that on everything. I never stopped loving you. I got lost. Clay found me in a dark time, and he made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. You're my home. Please come back. Love. Jules. I read it once. Then again. Then I tossed it in the fire. Not out of rage. Out of clarity. See, people always talk about betrayal like it's a bomb, sudden, loud, catastrophic. But most betrayal isn't an explosion. It's a slow drip, a silent erosion. And by the time you notice the damage, your foundation's already gone. She said I was her home. That was rich. Because I'd spent the last 8 years building one around her, emotionally, financially, spiritually, and she burned it down for a man who wears skinny jeans and pronounces espresso like it's French. Back inside, I poured myself a drink. Whiskey, neat. Morning sun hitting the ice like a spotlight on my self-control. Then I opened the shoebox. Inside were remnants of a simpler time, birthday cards from Jules, our wedding vow copies, old Polaroids of us camping before life got too complicated. Underneath all that, buried beneath the nostalgia, was what I was really looking for. A copy of the deed. See, that cabin? It's not just sentimental. It's leverage. My grandfather, a paranoid old genius, had tied it into a trust when he passed. Only one clause. It goes to my spouse upon death unless divorce proceedings are initiated beforehand. Back when we got married, I had added Jules' name to the trust, not the deed, the trust. My lawyer, at the time, called it symbolic but secure, which meant, legally speaking, Jules didn't own an inch of this place. But she thought she did, and that was useful. I spent the rest of the afternoon drafting a letter, not for her, but for Clay. Clay, let's cut through the Hallmark sentiment. You won her. You've got her. Congratulations on inheriting a full-time emotional jigsaw puzzle with trust issues and a passive-aggressive streak. I built a life with her. I paid for the house. I built the credit. I planned the future. She's your problem now. But here's the part you'll care about. She lied to you too. See, this cabin? The one she said you'd both escape to? It's not hers. Never was. And the house back in town? Guess who's still on the mortgage? So before you start buying flannel shirts and planning hikes, you might want to talk to your lawyer. Cheers. Evan. I printed it. Neatly. Folded it once. Slid it into a cream envelope. Then I called a courier service. Yeah, I broke radio silence for this. Small price to pay. I addressed the envelope to Clay's work, the same design firm where Jules now worked late. Let them get the mail together. Let him open it. Let her watch his face crumble as he realizes she sold him a fantasy wrapped in lies. That was day 4. That was the day I stopped being the man who'd been cheated on and became the man who was one step ahead. Clay opened the envelope on a Wednesday. I know this not because I was watching, but because Jules texted me 6 times before noon, each message more frantic than the last. The calm ones come first, as they always do. Hey, just got to the office. Can we talk? Then a little more urgency. Evan, did you send something to Clay? What did you say? By the 5th message. What the hell is wrong with you? And finally, you're being cruel. Ah, there it is. The word cheaters use when consequences make them uncomfortable. I sat on the porch of the cabin, coffee in hand, watching the fog rolling off the lake. Something about that scene, the quiet mist, the old wood creaking beneath me, the fire still smoldering in the hearth behind me, it all felt like the ending to a bad story and the prologue to a better one. Let her squirm. Clay, from what I gathered, was not accustomed to complications. Men like him float through life on charm and vague talent, convinced they're special because the world hasn't corrected them yet. My letter wasn't a correction, it was a reality check. And reality, unlike Clay, doesn't flatter. I imagine the moment unfolded something like this. He walks into the office with that just stepped out of a LinkedIn photo confidence. Jules greets him with her usual smirk and a kiss on the cheek, pretending the air isn't electric with secrets. They settle in, side by side, the way new couples do when they're still pretending they accidentally spend every waking minute together. Then reception buzzes. Package for Mr. Clay Hensley. He signs for it. It's light. Envelope. Thick paper. No return address. He opens it. He reads. In silence. Because you can't PR spin a trust document. You can't swagger out of a mortgage clause. And you sure as hell can't romance your way through the realization that the woman sitting beside you just painted her future with crayons borrowed from another man's box. Later that evening, Jules called. I didn't pick up. She left a voicemail. Her voice was the same one she used on me years ago when she broke my grandmother's vase and tried to convince me it was already cracked. Evan, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish, but you've made things very difficult. Clay's upset, and I don't blame him. That letter? That was childish. We just wanted peace. A clean break. I thought you were better than this. I replayed the voicemail twice. Not because I needed clarity, but because I wanted to hear her say clean break, like she'd accidentally tripped and fallen into Clay's bed after yoga class. Clean break? You don't take a sledgehammer to someone's life and then complain about the mess. The next day, I got another envelope. This one was postmarked and official-looking Clay's firm, no return name, but clearly from him. I opened it slowly, like unwrapping bad news with a bow on top. Typed. Formal. Trying too hard. Evan. Your letter was received. I would prefer we keep all matters civil moving forward. Please refrain from any further direct communication with myself or with Jules unless through legal counsel. You've made your point. We all deserve closure, especially Jules, who is clearly struggling with your absence and your reaction. I understand this is difficult for you, but I'd encourage you to seek support. Harboring resentment only breeds toxicity. Regards. Clay Hensley. I laughed so loud I nearly spilled my coffee. Regards. Like this was some corporate breakup. Like he hadn't waltzed into my life, stolen my wife, and expected a fruit basket in return. He talked about closure. And Jules. Struggling with my absence? She was struggling with exposure. Turns out, when you build a castle on sand, a single letter is all it takes to turn the tide. And that's when the idea hit me, not revenge, not exactly. Something better. Control. See, people like Jules and Clay thrive when they have the narrative. Her lover's caught in a web. Victim of a cold husband. We didn't mean to hurt anyone. I'd let them keep that story long enough. But now it was time for my version. I started writing again. Not letters. A memoir. Working title. Terms and Conditions. A husband's guide to being replaced by a man with hair gel and a yoga pass. I didn't write it out of spite. I wrote it because I realized something. People don't just want to survive heartbreak. They want to understand it. And no one tells the story from the beginning of the fracture, the small moments, the strange glances, the odd silences. They only ever tell it once it's burning. I wrote 5,000 words that night. Laughed through most of it. Chapter 1. The dinner reservation that should have been a warning label. Chapter 2. Things my wife said while she was falling out of love and into Clay. Chapter 3. Advice I'd give my past self before he bought her that anniversary bracelet. Therapy? No thanks. I had a keyboard in time. When I was done writing for the night, I stared at the fire again. And I thought, maybe I was being cruel. But cruelty, when measured, when wielded like a scalpel instead of a hammer, can be a form of truth. Clay and Jules weren't looking for closure. They were looking for permission. And I wasn't going to give it to them. It was a Wednesday. Mid-morning. Cloudy. A breeze rolled off the lake like it had something to say but wasn't in the mood for conversation. I was sitting at the cabin's kitchen table, writing again. Chapter 6. Infidelity and other group projects no one asked to join. That's when I heard the car. Tires on gravel, an unfamiliar crunch. It wasn't the postman, and it sure wasn't the delivery driver who brought me groceries once a week and never asked questions. This was deliberate. Intentional. Jules. She parked like she still owned the place. I watched from the window as she stepped out, wrapped in a beige trench coat like she thought she was in a detective novel. Designer boots. Hair perfect. Sunglasses, even though the sun hadn't RSVP'd today. She stood there for a second, staring at the front of the cabin like she was debating if she still had the right to approach it. Then, of course, she did. A knock. Not hesitant, no, that wasn't her style. Confident. Measured. A woman still under the illusion that closure was something she got to script. I opened the door. Jules. Evan. Her voice was soft. Too soft. That, I come in peace, tone people use when they're walking into a room they burned down last week. Want to come in? I asked, stepping aside. She blinked, caught off guard. She thought she'd have to negotiate her way inside, maybe throw in a little emotional leverage. Instead, I was calm. And that? That rattled her. Thanks, she said quietly, stepping in. The cabin looked nothing like the home we once shared. There were no pictures of us. No reminders. No scented candles or Pinterest nonsense. Just wood, fire, and silence. She glanced around, as if searching for a memory to hold on to, and came up empty. This place feels different, she said, walking slowly. No, Jules. You feel different. She winced, just a flicker, but recovered quickly. I didn't come to fight. I didn't invite you to talk. Her mouth opened, then closed. I could see her recalibrating. She hadn't expected cold civility. She expected tears or rage. Instead, I gave her the emotional version of a closed bank window. Please deposit your guilt elsewhere. She pulled off her sunglasses and placed them on the table like she was claiming territory. I read what you sent Clay, she said finally. I know. It was petty. No, I said, meeting her eyes. It was factual. You should try it sometime. She blinked, stunned by the shot. I wasn't loud. I wasn't cruel. I was just honest. And that, for someone used to sugar-coated forgiveness, was the sharpest edge. I came here, she said carefully, because I needed to look you in the eye. Why? To explain. She hesitated, to apologize. I poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if she wanted one. I placed it in front of her, black and uninviting. Apology accepted, I said. She looked up, surprised. Really? Sure. I shrugged. Doesn't change anything. But I accepted. Jules stirred her coffee, even though there was nothing in it. Nervous habit. She hated black coffee. Always had. Said it tasted like regret. Now, oddly fitting. I didn't mean to fall for him, she said. It wasn't planned. Neither was our mortgage. Still had to pay for it. She looked down. It wasn't about him. Oh, it was about me. I felt invisible. Dull. Like I was just someone's wife. I nodded. You were someone's wife. That was kind of the deal. It's not that simple. No, Jules. It is. You were unhappy, and instead of telling me, you replaced me. That's not complexity. That's cowardice. There it was. I saw her flinch again, but she didn't deny it. She knew I was done playing polite husband to a woman who rehearsed her betrayal in front of a mirror. I know I messed up, she said, voice quiet now. I didn't handle any of it right. Let me ask you something, I said, leaning forward. Why'd you bring me to that dinner with him? What was the goal? Humiliate me? Parade your new relationship like a TED Talk on moving on? She shook her head. No, I wanted to be honest. You wanted to be seen being honest. Big difference. Silence. She didn't argue because there was nothing to argue. That dinner was never about closure. It was a performance. And I was the prop. Clay's upset, she said suddenly. I smiled. Good. Her eyes narrowed. You wanted him to break up with me, didn't you? No. I wanted him to see you. Jules stared at me, the mask slipping slightly. He said I made him feel manipulated. You did, I replied. Just like you did to me. Clay just found out sooner. She swallowed. So what, Evan? You want revenge? You want me to suffer? No, I said. I want peace. But you, I leaned back in my chair. You don't know what peace looks like without control. That's your tragedy. Her eyes filled with tears. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the instinct to reach for her hand. I loved you, she whispered. I know. Do you still love me? I looked at her. The woman I once built a life with. The woman who smiled at me across campfires and dinner tables and pillows after long days. The same woman who chose someone else without blinking. And I answered honestly. I love who you were. I mourn who you became. She stood up slowly. Took her untouched coffee. Looked around one more time like maybe there was something she left behind worth salvaging. There wasn't. Goodbye, Evan, she said. Bye, Jules. No hugs. No closure speech. Just the end of a story neither of us were willing to keep pretending had a happy ending. The door clicked shut behind her. And I took a deep breath. It didn't feel like relief. It felt like silence. But the kind you can live with. 3 days after Jules left the cabin, another envelope arrived. Postmarked. No return address. But I knew the handwriting too neat to be hers, too stylized to be corporate. Clay. Inside was a single page. Typed. Crisp. Evan. You got what you wanted. She left. She said I made her feel small. Said I was just a reaction to the life she ran away from. So congratulations. You outlasted me. You broke her down more in a few months of silence than I ever could with affection. And somehow, I don't think you're happy either. You win. I'm done playing. Clay. There was no signature. Just that last line. I'm done playing. I folded the letter, poured a drink, and sat by the fire, letting the sentence echo. Clay didn't lose Jules. He realized he never had her. She was chasing feelings, not people. When those feelings changed, so did her loyalty. And that's the cruelest kind of partner, the one who treats affection like a lease agreement. But Clay? He wasn't my concern anymore. He was just a stepping stone on a road to nowhere. I returned to the city that weekend. The house was quieter than the cabin, but colder. Not because of the walls, because of what they'd seen. Laughter that meant nothing. Goodnight kisses backed by lies. That weird little drawer in the bathroom where she kept her self-care notes next to receipts from nights she claimed were work dinners. I walked through every room and gathered what mattered, A few photographs of my family, books she never touched, and tools from the garage she always said were clutter. Everything else? I boxed up, labeled, cataloged. Then, I called a local nonprofit and told them to come take the furniture, every bit of it. If you're going to rebuild, start with the floorboards. Next, I called a realtor. Going through a split? She asked kindly. No, I said. I'm going through a rebirth. She didn't ask again. By Monday, the for sale sign was in the yard. By Friday, the divorce papers were finalized. No mediation. No fighting. Jules signed quickly. Almost too quickly. Turns out, she'd moved in with her sister. No Clay. No new soulmate. Just her, a guest room, and a mirror. Hope it's a good mirror. I self-published the book. Didn't even try to sell it. Just printed 20 copies and mailed them to the right people, close friends, some mutual acquaintances, and her parents. Chapter titles were changed. Names were blurred. But anyone who knew the story would know. And everyone who didn't? They'd just think it was sharp, darkly funny, and oddly familiar. A few highlights. How to spot a liar in designer boots. The yoga class where my marriage died. Love letters to the man she told me not to worry about. Closure is a myth. So is loyalty if you marry for chemistry alone. Feedback rolled in. Brutal, but cathartic. Made me laugh, then made me call my wife just to say thanks. One guy mailed me a 6-pack and a handwritten note. Page 114 hit like a truck. You're not alone, man. Cheers to freedom. I didn't need to profit off it. I just needed to publish it. Because sometimes, survival means telling the truth louder than the lie. It wasn't fire. It wasn't fury. It was freedom. Cruel revenge doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be permanent. She lost the house. She lost Clay. She lost control of the story. She thought I'd crumble. I wrote a book. She thought I'd scream. I left in silence. She thought I'd beg. I built a life without her. They say revenge is best served cold. I say it's better served quiet. Because when people like her finally look back and see what they gave up for a dopamine rush in someone else's passenger seat, they realize something gut deep. They didn't just cheat on someone they loved. They traded down. As for me, I bought a new place upstate. Nothing fancy. Just a porch, a fire pit, and peace. Sometimes I still write. Sometimes I just watch the birds and don't write at all. And every now and then, I get a new message request on social media from an account with no profile picture. I never open them. I already got closure. And the best part? She knows.